Hey guys, tonight we're going on a journey, not just through time, but into the deepest and darkest corners of human hubris. We're going to whisper about the mortals who dared to steal from the gods, a choice that, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive. We'll be tiptoeing through ancient lands and forgotten temples, feeling the oppressive weight of divine anger. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the deck of the Argo, a ship built for speed and glory, and your heart is a drum against your ribs. The salt spray of the Ionian Sea stings your face, but it can't wash away the nervous thrill. You've been chosen, handpicked for a quest that will either make you a legend or a ghost. Your leader, the young and charismatic Jason, has a single, impossible goal to sail to the distant land of Colchis and steal the Golden Fleece, a sacred artifact guarded by a sleepless dragon and a furious god. This isn't just a simple heist. You tell yourself, it's a matter of destiny, a way to reclaim your rightful place. King Pelias, Jason's uncle, stole the throne and now demands the fleece as a condition for its return. It's a fool's errand, a death sentence. But here you are, a tiny speck on the vast sea, chasing a legend. The truth is, the fleece isn't just a fleece, it's a divine gift, the hide of a winged ram, sent by the gods to save a pair of royal children from a treacherous stepmother. This ram, named Chrysomelos, was sacrificed to Zeus after its heroic flight, and its fleece was hung in a sacred grove, where it radiated with the power of the sun god. Helios. You're not just taking an object, you're taking a piece of the sun itself, and you're about to find out just how hot a sun god's fury can burn. The journey is long, a blur of storms and strange islands. You pass the land of the Amazons, a tribe of fearsome female warriors, and the clashing rocks, two massive cliffs that smash together, a deadly gate to the Black Sea. But the most unsettling part of the voyage is the growing feeling that you are being watched, not by mortals, but by something ancient and all-seeing. The sun feels brighter, its warmth a little too intense, as if it's trying to peer through the clouds and into your soul. You remember the old sailors' tales, the ones about how even a stolen piece of wood from a sacred tree can bring a curse. What you're planning is far, far worse. After weeks of sailing, the Argo finally glides into the harbour of Colchis. The air is heavy and humid, thick with the scent of unfamiliar spices and a subtle, metallic tang that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. The city, ruled by King Aeetes, is a marvel of gold and black obsidian, its temples gleaming under the relentless sun. Jason goes to the king, pleading his case with a mixture of charm and desperation. Aeetes, however, is no fool. He knows a thief when he sees one. He demands that Jason complete a series of impossible tasks before he can even think about laying a hand on the fleece. First, he must yoke 2 fire-breathing bulls and plough a field. Then, he must sow that field with dragon's teeth, which will immediately sprout into an army of fierce warriors. Finally, he must defeat that army. You and the other Argonauts watch in despair. It's a clever, cruel trap. No mortal could possibly survive. But Aeetes has a daughter, the sorceress Medea, and she, for reasons you can't quite grasp, has fallen for Jason. She agrees to help him, and this is where the real unravelling begins. Medea gives Jason a special ointment to protect him from the bull's fire, and she teaches him a trick to turn the army of warriors against each other. You watch in awe as Jason, guided by her whispered instructions, completes the tasks. The bulls, their fiery breath a terrifying spectacle, are yoked, the dragon's teeth are sown, and the earth gives birth to a legion of armed men who, in a moment of pure genius, are tricked into fighting one another until none remain. It's a victory, But a hollow one, the king, enraged and suspicious, refuses to hand over the fleece. So, under the cloak of night, you and Jason, guided by Medea, sneak into the sacred grove. The air is still and heavy, and the silence is broken only by the chirping of unseen insects. The grove itself is a place of unearthly beauty, its trees casting long, dancing shadows. In the centre, hanging from the branches of a mighty oak, is the golden fleece. It isn't just gold, it's a thing of living light, a shimmering tapestry of power that seems to pulse with a life of its own. It radiates a soft, comforting warmth, the kind you feel when the sun hits your skin just right after a long winter. It smells of fresh earth and clean wool, and it hums with a low, constant energy that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. The fleece is guarded by a dragon, a colossal, serpent-like creature that is. As promised, forever awake, its scales glisten in the moonlight, and a low, guttural rumble emanates from its throat. A sound that vibrates through the very ground you stand on. This is the moment of truth. You, a simple mortal, are about to steal something that belongs to a god. Is not just an object, it's a symbol of divine providence, of sacrifice, and of the sun's generous but demanding grace. You can feel the weight of this decision pressing down on you. A well-known historical fact about this quest is that the Argo itself was said to contain a piece of the sacred oak from the Oracle of Dodona, allowing the ship to speak and guide its crew. This detail underscores the divine nature of the entire journey and how the gods were, in a way, complicit in their own theft. Or perhaps, simply allowing a mortal to walk into their own trap. A less known detail is that the fleece was believed to have healing properties, and its presence in Colchis was said to have made the land fertile and prosperous. Stealing it wasn't just a political act, it was a cosmic one, dooming an entire kingdom to poverty and famine. Historians still debate whether Jason truly loved Medea, or was simply using her to achieve his goals. A point that makes his eventual betrayal of her all the more tragic and despicable. Medea, a sorceress, doesn't need a sword or a shield. She carries a small, simple vial. You watch as she walks calmly toward the dragon, a figure of serene power in the face of absolute terror. She begins to chant, her voice a melodic whisper that seems to seep into the very air. She sprinkles the contents of the vial onto the dragon's face, and you watch as its massive, unblinking eyes begin to droop. The low rumble from its throat softens, becomes a gentle, snoring breath. The dragon, the sleepless guardian, is finally asleep. Jason, with a shaking hand, reaches out and takes the fleece. The moment it leaves the tree, the soft humming ceases, the warmth fades, an icy preternatural cold fills the air, and the moon seems to hide its face behind a cloud. You've done it. You've stolen a piece of the sun. But the world, you realise, feels a little darker now, a little colder. The taste of victory is ashy and bitter on your tongue, and you can't shake the feeling that the true price of this heist is yet to be paid. You and the others scramble back to the ship, the fleece clutched tightly in Jason's arms. Medea, having betrayed her father and her home, is with you. As you sail away from Colchis, you can almost hear the roar of King Aeetes' rage echoing across the water. But you know that's not the sound you should be worried about. It's the silence from above, the lack of sunbeams on the water that makes you shiver. You stole from a god, and the cosmic scales are now wildly out of balance. It's a funny, terrifying thought, that the most successful heist in history might just be the one that gets you all killed. The fleece, now just a beautiful, glittering thing, feels less like a trophy and more like a ticking bomb. The sun, your generous but distant benefactor, has now turned into a silent, vengeful judge. The light of the golden fleece, which once promised life and warmth, now feels like a stolen ember, one that's about to go out and leave you all in the freezing, unforgiving dark. You're back in Iolcus, the golden fleece now draped over the throne in your new palace. Jason, your fearless leader, is now king, having reclaimed his birthright with the help of a stolen sun god's gift. You and the other Argonauts are heroes, celebrated in the streets, feasted in the great halls. The city is a sea of joyous faces, and the air is thick with the sweet smell of roasting meat and celebratory wine. For a while, it feels like the adventure is over. You risked everything, and you won, but a nagging, subtle dread has settled over the kingdom, a feeling that something is not right. It's a feeling that grows with each passing day, a low hum of unease that you can't quite shake. The fleece, which should be a symbol of prosperity and divine favour, is instead a source of a strange, creeping terror in the throne room. It doesn't just sit there, it radiates. It gives off a powerful, almost tangible heat, and the light from it is a little too bright, a little too golden. It's a borrowed power, and you feel it in the way the sun itself seems to have taken notice. The real sun, the one in the sky, now feels different. It's too hot. Its rays a little too sharp, almost like it's angry. Plants in the fields, once lush and green, begin to yellow and wilt. The streams and rivers, which used to flow with a cool, clear water, now run sluggish and warm, almost as if they're boiling from below. It's a slow, insidious curse, a gradual decay that no one wants to speak about, because to speak of it would be to admit that your great victory was, in fact, a great crime. You see it in the faces of the people. They still cheer for you, but there's a new, worried look in their eyes. You hear it in the whispers in the marketplace, about how the harvests are failing and the cattle are growing thin. You see it in the way Jason's new wife, the sorceress Medea, stares at the fleece. Her eyes are dark and knowing. She understands the nature of what you have stolen, the weight of the divine fury that is now simmering just beneath the surface of your world. She's the one who helped you steal it, after all. And you can tell she's starting to regret it. The fleece, this beautiful, terrible thing, is a constant reminder of the debt you all owe, a debt that is being collected, bit by bit, in the form of a kingdom's slow destruction. It's a funny thought, that the thing you stole to save your kingdom might be the very thing that is now killing it. The people of Iolcus start to suffer from strange ailments, a sudden fever, a debilitating exhaustion that seems to have no cause. The city's healers are baffled. They can't find a cure, and they can't even seem to understand the cause. One day, you walk through the city and see a mother holding her child, its skin a pale, sallow colour. The mother looks up at you with a mixture of hope and accusation. You are a hero. After all, you should be able to help. But what can you do? You, the thief, are a part of the problem. You stole the sun's power, and now the sun itself is stealing the life from your kingdom. A well-known historical fact about this part of the story is that Jason's uncle, King Pelias, was eventually killed by his own daughters, who were tricked by Medea into believing they could restore his youth by boiling him. This act of sorcery and violence underscores the chaotic, destructive power that Medea brought into Jason's life, a power inextricably linked to the stolen fleece, a less-known detail. However, is that some versions of the myth suggest that the heat and blight were so severe that the crops not only failed, but also turned to dust in the fields, a clear sign of the sun's ultimate refusal to nourish a land that had stolen its essence. Historians still debate whether Medea's betrayal of her family was driven by genuine love for Jason, or by a thirst for power and revenge, a question that adds a tragic layer of complexity to her character and to the entire story. The curse of the stolen fleece isn't just about a dying kingdom, it's about the erosion of the natural order. The seasons are out of sync, spring comes, but the flowers are brittle. Summer arrives, but the heat is unbearable, and the nights are eerily cold. The sea itself seems to reject you. The fishing boats come back empty, and the fishermen tell stories of strange, glowing creatures in the depths, their light a sickly, unnatural imitation of the fleece's power. You remember the old sailor's tale about not looking directly at the sun. Now, you feel like the sun is looking directly at you, and its gaze is full of hatred. Jason, now king, is growing more and more paranoid. He spends hours in the throne room, staring at the fleece, trying to understand its power. He touches it, and you can see a flicker of pain cross his face, as if it's too hot to handle. He's no longer the charming, confident leader you followed. He's a haunted man, burdened by the power he stole. You can see his hubris, the great sin of a mortal trying to be a god. In the way he rules, he makes rash decisions, demands more and more from his people, all while the kingdom withers around him. He thinks he can fight the curse with decrees and laws, but you know better. You can't fight a god's anger with a mortal's will. The king's downfall is a slow, agonizing process. He begins to neglect his duties, spending his days in a feverish, obsessive study of the fleece, trying to unlock its secrets. He starts to lose his grip on reality, seeing enemies everywhere, even among his own loyal Argonauts, the other kings of Greece, who once hailed him as a hero. Now look upon his blighted kingdom with a mixture of pity and contempt. They see the curse for what it is, a clear sign that Jason is no longer favoured by the gods. He's a pariah, a living testament to the brutal consequences of stealing from the divine. The final blow comes from Medea. Her love for Jason has turned to a bitter, burning hatred, fueled by his eventual betrayal of her for a new princess. This is the moment she truly embraces her dark side. She takes her revenge in a way that is both terrifying and brilliant, using her sorcery to destroy Jason's new bride and the king himself. The palace burns, a spectacle of fire and death that feels like a divine punishment. The golden fleece, the source of all this suffering, is consumed by the flames, its light a final, angry flare before it disappears forever. You watch from a distance, a lone witness to the tragic end of a kingdom built on a stolen god's gift. It's a sad, brutal lesson, a reminder that some things, no matter how beautiful or powerful they are simply not meant for mortals to possess. The sun, in the end, always gets its revenge. The darkness is absolute, a suffocating blanket that presses in on all sides. The air, if you can even call it that, is thick and heavy, smelling of cold stone and forgotten things, the memory of the sun, of the warmth of its light on your skin, is a distant, painful echo. You are in the Underworld, a place of silent suffering and eternal regret. But you're not just a passive observer here, you are Sisyphus, and your crime is not just against one god, but against the very concept of death itself. You tricked the gods of the Underworld, and for that, you are burdened with a punishment that is as ingenious as it is cruel. You stand at the bottom of a steep, rocky hill. Before you lies a colossal boulder, its surface rough and unforgiving. This is your life's work, your eternal torment. You have to push it to the top. Every day, you push. You plant your feet in the loose gravel, your muscles screaming in protest, and you heave. The stone is heavy, impossibly so. It's not just the physical weight, it's the weight of your hubris, of your defiance. You tricked Thanatos, the god of death, and bound him in chains, preventing anyone from dying. For a time, the world was a strange, chaotic place where mortals lived forever, and the cycle of life and death was broken. The gods were furious. Of course, Ares, the god of war, was particularly incensed, as his battlefields were now filled with immortal warriors who just kept fighting. Zeus eventually freed Thanatos, and your temporary triumph was over. But that wasn't your only crime. You were also a notoriously clever and deceitful king. You betrayed guests, lied to the gods, and even exposed Zeus's affair with a nymph. You were a master of trickery. But you were about to learn that no amount of cleverness could save you from divine wrath. When Thanatos finally came for you again, you played one last trick, convincing your wife not to perform the proper burial rituals. So, when you arrived in the Underworld, you complained to Persephone, the queen, that you had been improperly buried and begged to be allowed to return to the world of the living to set things right. She, out of pity, granted your wish. You, of course, had no intention of ever returning. You spent your second chance feasting and celebrating, living life to its fullest, until Hermes, the messenger god, dragged you back down to the underworld by force. It's a funny, pathetic kind of defiance, to cheat death twice only to be trapped forever in a place of death. Now, you are here, and your punishment is the boulder. You push and you strain, feeling the scrape of the rock against your calloused hands. Slowly, inch by painful inch, you get it moving up the hill. The journey is a long, grueling one. The air is thick with the groans of the damned, and the only sound you make is the heavy rasp of your own breath. You see other souls in the distance, each one suffering their own unique torment. A chilling reminder of the varied and creative ways the gods find to punish mortals who cross them, but none of them are yours. Yours is a lonely, repetitive kind of suffering. A well-known historical fact about Sisyphus is that his name is believed to come from the Greek word sophos, clever, and sys, with, suggesting his reputation as a particularly cunning individual. A less-known detail is that some interpretations of the myth suggest that the boulder represents the futility of human ambition and the cyclical nature of life. Historians still debate whether Sisyphus's punishment was truly a form of justice or an example of a god's disproportionate and vengeful power, a question that makes his eternal struggle all the more profound and tragic. You're a mortal, and you have mortal limits. You get tired, you get exhausted. The sweat beads on your brow and drips into your eyes, stinging. The muscles in your back and legs are a constant. Burning ache. The air in your lungs feels thin and inadequate. But you have no choice. You must push. The boulder feels like a part of you now, a heavy, unyielding extension of your own body. You look up and see the summit, a dark, jagged silhouette against the unending blackness. It's so close. You think just a little further. You give one last, Herculean push, and the boulder teeters at the very edge of the summit. You gasp for air, your body trembling with exhaustion and a fleeting, triumphant joy. You've done it. You've reached the top. But your victory is momentary. The moment you let go, the boulder, with a deafening rumble, begins to roll back down the hill. It gathers speed, a dark, destructive force, and crashes back down to the bottom, right where you started. You're left standing alone, looking at the empty spot where the boulder once was. The crushing sound of the boulder hitting the bottom echoes in your ears. A sound that says all your efforts were for nothing. You have to go back down, and you have to start all over again. This is the nature of your punishment. It's not the pain of the push, but the soul-crushing despair of its ultimate futility. You are forced to repeat the same impossible task, day in and day out, for all eternity. It's a psychological torment that is far worse than any physical pain. You have no hope of ever completing your task, no chance of redemption. You are trapped in a loop of endless effort and inevitable failure. It's a beautiful, terrifying symbol of what happens when you try to outsmart the very forces that govern the universe. The gods aren't just punishing you for your actions, they're punishing you for your arrogance. They're showing you that a mortal's cleverness is nothing in the face of divine law, and you, Sisyphus, are their eternal example. You trudge back down the hill, your body heavy with defeat. The cycle begins anew. You place your hands on the cold stone, and you push. The first moments are the hardest, a fresh wave of despair washing over you as you feel the familiar weight. But you do it anyway, because you have to. You are Sisyphus, the king who cheated death, and you are destined to push this rock forever. a grim and poignant reminder that a mortal's ambition, when it crosses the divine, is a fool's errand, an unending pointless task that will never ever be completed. The air in this part of the underworld is a little different. It's not just thick with dread, it's also filled with the sound of running water, a soft, beckoning gurgle that is the cruelest sound you've ever heard. You're not the one suffering this particular torment, but you're close enough to watch, and the agony of this other soul is a new kind of terror. This is the realm of Tantalus, a king so foolishly arrogant he believed he could deceive the gods, and his punishment is a testament to the fact that you can never truly hide anything from them. You see him now, standing in a pool of clear, sparkling water. It laps at his chin, so close that all he would have to do is bend his head to drink. Above him, on a low-hanging branch, are the most beautiful fruits you have ever seen: ripe pears, sweet figs, and blushing apples. They are so close he could almost reach out and touch them. The scent of their sweetness hangs in the air, a constant, unbearable promise. The sound of the water is a hypnotic whisper, a relentless invitation. This is Tantalus, a man who, in life, was a favoured son of Zeus, invited to dine with the gods on Olympus, but that privilege, that proximity to the divine, only fuelled his hubris. His first crime was a theft. He stole ambrosia and nectar from the gods' table and brought it back to his mortal friends, sharing the sacred food of the immortals with those who were not meant to have it. It was an act of pride, a king trying to show off his divine connections. A truly bizarre and less known detail of his story is that some myths claim he used the ambrosia not to share, but to test the gods' omniscience, to see if he could steal from them without their knowledge. This makes his crime less about generosity and more about a cynical, dangerous game, but his most famous and most monstrous. Crime was yet to come. To test the gods' wisdom and knowledge, he invited them to a banquet in a horrifying display of arrogance, served them the flesh of his own son, Pelops, whom he had butchered and cooked. He believed that the gods, in their greatness, would not be able to tell what they were eating. He was wrong. The gods, omniscient as they were, immediately knew what Tantalus had done. Demeter, in her grief over her daughter Persephone's abduction, was the only one who, distracted, took a bite from the boy's shoulder. The gods, disgusted and furious, resurrected Pelops and replaced his missing shoulder with a piece of ivory. As for Tantalus, the god's anger was swift and absolute. This crime, this act of ultimate hubris, sealed his fate. A well-known historical fact is that the word tantalize comes directly from Tantalus in his eternal torment. You watch as he tries to drink. He bends his head, his face a mask of desperate longing, but just as his lips are about to touch the water, it recedes, it sinks into the earth, leaving behind only the dry, cracked mud. He straightens up, his eyes wide with a fleeting terror, and the water rushes back, lapping at his chin once more. He tries again, and again. The same thing happens. The water is forever present, forever out of his reach. It's an agonizing, maddening cycle of hope and crushing disappointment. Then he tries for the fruit. He stretches out his hand, his fingers trembling with hunger. But as he reaches for a pear, a sudden gust of wind, a whisper of divine power, blows the branch just out of his grasp. It's the same torment, but with a different focus. The fruit hangs there, just a few inches from his reach, a beautiful mocking illusion of sustenance. You can almost smell the sweetness, a cruel trick of this wretched place. He's surrounded by everything he needs to survive, yet he is eternally starving and parched. This is the price of his crimes eternal, unbearable hunger and thirst. It's a punishment that perfectly fits the crime. He stole food and drink from the gods, and now he is forever denied them. He challenged their wisdom and their power, and now he is eternally reminded of his own mortal fragility. Historians still debate whether Tantalus's punishment was a fitting justice for his horrific crimes, or an example of the gods' tendency to inflict punishments that are crueler and more prolonged than necessary. A philosophical question, perhaps, but one that seems to have a clear answer to you as you watch the king suffer. The punishment of Tantalus is a chilling warning, a story whispered through the ages to remind mortals of their place. It's a message that says, you cannot steal from us, you cannot deceive us, and you cannot share our sacred gifts. He is not just suffering for his own sins, he is suffering as an example, a living monument to the terrible fate that awaits those who dare to cross the line between mortal and divine. It's a funny, awful kind of irony, that the man who wanted to be like the gods is now the one who is forever denied the simple pleasures of life, the basic necessities that even the lowest mortal takes for granted. He is a king who wanted to dine with the gods, and now he is a wretch who can't even have a single sip of water. The sight of him, his face a contorted mask of agony, is a powerful and unsettling thing to witness. You feel a strange kind of pity for him, a deep empathy for his unending struggle, but you also feel a cold, hard sense of dread, a feeling that reminds you that the gods are not to be trifled with. Their power is absolute, their anger is boundless, and their punishments are eternal. You watch Tantalus bend his head to the water once more, his hope a flickering candle in the unending darkness, and you know, with a terrible certainty, that the water will recede, and the agony will continue, forever and ever. The journey continues, and the gloom of the underworld gives way to a different kind of oppressive atmosphere. The air here is sharp and thin, a biting wind whipping around you, carrying with it the scent of rock and something else, something ancient and suffering. You are no longer in the realm of the damned mortals, you are in the realm of the damned gods, and before you, chained to a craggy peak in the Caucasus Mountains, is Prometheus. He's a titan, a being of immense power and intellect, but here he is, a figure of profound pity and pain. His form is colossal, his body twisted and bound by unbreakable chains. They are not just chains of metal, but chains forged by the power of Zeus himself, a physical manifestation of a god's eternal rage. The wind howls around him, a constant mournful wail, and the cold bites at your skin. But he seems to feel none of it, or perhaps he feels it all, and it is just another layer of his unending torment. His crime was a great one, a theft not of gold or ambrosia, but of a far more fundamental and dangerous thing, knowledge. You see, when the gods were deciding on the fate of humanity, Prometheus, a friend and advocate for mortals, felt that they had been given the short end of the stick. They were weak, mortal, and without the tools to survive in a harsh world. So, he took matters into his own hands. He tricked Zeus, ensuring that humans would get the best parts of the animals and sacrifice to the gods. But his most audacious act was yet to come. He stole fire. Not just any fire, but the very essence of it from the forge of Hephaestus, a divine spark that belonged only to the gods. He hid it in a fennel stalk and brought it down to earth, a gift that would forever change the course of human history. With fire, humans could cook their food, forge tools, and most importantly, create light and warmth in the darkness. It was a gift that gave them a glimpse of the power of the gods themselves. It was an act of profound compassion, but also of profound defiance. A truly bizarre and less-known detail is that some myths say Prometheus created humans in the first place, moulding them from clay, making his theft of fire a more paternalistic act. He was giving his own children the tools they needed to thrive. Zeus, of course, was furious, not just because of the theft, but because of the insolence, the audacity of a titan daring to give a gift that wasn't his to give. His punishment was swift and brutal. He had Prometheus chained to this mountain, and every day an eagle, a symbol of Zeus's own power, would come and feast on his liver, and every night the liver would regenerate, a cruel, magical curse that ensured the punishment would be eternal. It's a well-known historical fact that the image of Prometheus bound to a rock is one of the most enduring symbols of rebellion against authority and the suffering that comes with it. You watch as the eagle, a massive predatory thing with a cruel beak, descends from the sky. It lands on Prometheus, and you hear a sickening sound, a wet tearing. As it begins its gruesome meal, you want to look away, to run and hide from the sight. But you can't. You're frozen in place, a witness to a torment that goes beyond anything you've seen in the Underworld. The eagle tears at the titan's flesh, and a low, guttural moan escapes his lips, a sound of unimaginable agony. This is the price of his gift, the unending consequence of his kindness. This is a different kind of punishment from Sisyphus or Tantalus. Theirs was a punishment of eternal futility and tantalizing want. Prometheus's is a punishment of constant, physical pain, a daily reminder of his defiance. He's not just suffering for stealing fire, he's suffering for giving humans a chance at greatness. He is the ultimate martyr, a divine being who sacrificed his own well-being for the good of a race that, to him, was worthy of more. Historians still debate whether Prometheus's act was a heroic gesture of defiance or a dangerous act of hubris, a question that gets to the very heart of the relationship between gods and mortals. Was it right to give mortals a power they weren't meant to have the answer? As you watch the eagle tear at his flesh, seems to be a resounding no. The gods are not to be outsmarted or defied, even by their own kind. The sun begins to set, and the eagle, full and satisfied, flies away. The chains, for a moment, seem to slacken. Prometheus, his body mangled and bleeding, takes a single, shuddering breath. You see his face, a mask of weary, ancient pain. He looks at you, his eyes are deep, knowing blue, and you feel as though he sees not just you, but all of humanity, all of the good and bad that came from his gift. He is a living, suffering monument to the consequences of his actions, and you, a mere mortal, are left to wonder if the price of fire was worth it. The sun disappears entirely, and a cold wind whips through the mountain pass. You know that by the morning the eagle will be back, and the cycle of pain will begin anew. Prometheus is a chilling, beautiful, and terrifying example of what happens when even a godlike being dares to steal a gift that wasn't theirs to give. He is a testament to the fact that divine anger is not just a myth, it is a brutal, unending reality, a punishment that can outlast even the very gods who inflict it. The air in your small, dusty village is usually a comforting mix of wood smoke and the scent of freshly baked bread. But today, it's different. It's filled with a sound you've never heard before, a music so beautiful it makes the hairs on your arm stand up, and so profoundly sad it makes your heart ache. You are a humble bard, a simple man with a simple life, and a few weeks ago, you made a terrible mistake. You stole a lyre. It wasn't a malicious act. You tell yourself, it was a moment of weakness, a temptation too great to resist. You were on a pilgrimage to a temple of Apollo, the god of music, poetry, and prophecy. You were there to offer a prayer, to ask for inspiration for your own humble songs, in a secluded chamber of the temple, in a place you weren't meant to be. You saw it, a lyre. It wasn't made of wood like yours, but of what seemed to be ivory and gold, its strings shimmering with a light of their own. It radiated a power that you, a simple mortal, couldn't comprehend. It was a god's instrument, a source of all beautiful music in the world, and you, in a moment of pure, foolish hubris, took it. You told yourself it would be a loan, that you would play it for a while and then return it, but deep down, you knew you were stealing. The moment your fingers touched the strings, a shock ran through you, a jolt of divine power that both exhilarated and terrified you. You left the temple, the lyre hidden in your sack, your heart a furious drum against your ribs. The journey home was a blur of nervous paranoia. You expected a thunderbolt from the sky, or a flock of angry ravens, But nothing happened. The gods, it seemed, were silent. You were a thief, but you had gotten away with it, or so you thought. The first time you played the lyre in your village square, the music was breathtaking. It was unlike anything you or anyone else had ever heard. The notes were clear and pure, each one a perfect, resonant tone that seemed to fill the very air with a kind of beautiful magic. The people were enthralled. They danced, they laughed, they sang along. You were a hero, a master musician. The lyre, you thought, was a blessing. But then, things started to change, slowly, subtly. The music began to twist. The beautiful notes started to carry a subtle undercurrent of melancholy. The songs you played, even the joyful ones, now had a mournful quality to them. The people who listened to you still gathered, but they no longer danced. They sat and listened, their faces a mixture of awe and sadness. The children would stop their games and stand still, their eyes wide with a strange, quiet sorrow. The music was no longer a source of joy. It was a source of despair. It was a beautiful, terrible sound that spoke of loss and regret. It was the sound of a god's fury, not in the form of a lightning bolt, but in the form of a slow, creeping curse. The stolen music was poisoned. The divine gift you took had turned into a divine weapon against you and everyone who heard your songs. A well-known historical fact is that the lyre was a central symbol of Greek culture, representing the harmony between gods and mortals, and that Apollo himself was often depicted with a less-known detail, however, is that some myths suggest Apollo would sometimes use his lyre to deliberately cause madness or sorrow in those who offended him. A power you are now discovering for yourself. Historians still debate whether a mortal could truly understand the divine nature of a god's instrument, or if it would simply be an object. A question that seems to be answered definitively by the beautiful, mournful music that now flows from your stolen lyre. You try to stop playing, but you can't. The lyre is a part of you now, a heavy, aching weight in your hands. It's a cruel twist, a kind of eternal punishment. You are a bard, and your purpose is to bring joy through music, but now you can only bring sorrow. You are a source of pain for your own people, for the very people you want to entertain and delight. You watch as your friends and family start to grow distant. They still listen, but they do so with a kind of weary resignation. They can't bear the constant sadness. The village, once so full of life and laughter, is now a place of quiet, melancholic suffering. You try to play other instruments, your old wooden lyre, a set of pipes, but the magic is gone. Your fingers feel clumsy. Your music sounds flat and lifeless. The only music that comes from you now is the stolen music, the poisoned music, the music of despair, and you have to keep playing it. It's an irresistible urge, a compulsion that you can't fight. The lyre calls to you, demands that you play, and you obey. A pathetic puppet dancing to a god's tune. You're trapped. You're a pariah, a living monument to the consequences of a foolish choice. The music, once a source of pride, is now a source of deep, unending shame. You are a bard who brings sorrow, a musician who plays the song of a god's fury, the final. Brutal lesson is not a physical one, but a spiritual one. You stole the tool of a god, and now you are forever a tool of that god's revenge. You are a human echo of divine anger, and the song you play will be your eternal torment. The salt-scented air of the Aegean Sea is a distant memory. Now, all you know is the cold, dank stone of your cave, a place where the sun never dares to venture. You are no longer the beautiful priestess you once were, a woman dedicated to the goddess Athena. You are Medusa, a monstrous creature with snakes for hair and a gaze that turns all who see it into stone. And your curse is a living, breathing testament to the peril of defiling a sacred space. Your story is one of terrible irony. You were a servant of Athena, a maiden sworn to her temple and to a life of purity. You were beautiful, perhaps too beautiful, and your beauty drew the attention of Poseidon, the god of the sea. It was in the very temple of Athena, a place of sanctuary and holiness, that he took you. You cried out to your goddess, begging for her to save you, to protect you from this desecration, but no help came. When the act was over, and you lay there, a broken and defiled thing, it was Athena who appeared. You expected comfort, compassion, or at the very least, justice, but you were wrong. Athena's anger was not for Poseidon, the powerful god who had wronged you. Her anger was for you, the priestess who had allowed her sacred temple to be defiled. A truly bizarre and less-known detail is that in some versions of the myth, Medusa was not a priestess, but simply a mortal woman of great beauty, and her transformation was a direct result of Athena's jealousy. Her punishment was swift and brutal. She looked at you, not with pity, but with a cold, righteous fury. She took your beautiful hair, the very source of your pride, and turned it into a writhing mass of venomous snakes. Your eyes, once filled with light and life, were changed into pools of living hatred, so potent that anyone who looked into them would be turned to stone. Your beauty, the thing that had caused your downfall, was now gone, replaced by a monstrous ugliness. You were a warning, a living, screaming monument to the consequences of allowing a god's temple to be desecrated. You fled the temple, a horrified and heartbroken creature. You ran until you found this cave, a place to hide from the world that now feared and hated you. You are a prisoner in your own body, a weapon of destruction that you cannot control. The snakes in your hair are a constant, slithering reminder of your curse. Their venomous hisses are the only company you have, a chorus of whispering malevolence that echoes in the silence of your cave. A well-known historical fact about Medusa is that she was not always a monster. In the earliest myths, she was one of the 3 Gorgon sisters, born of primordial deities, but her story evolved over time to become a tragic tale of a mortal woman cursed by a goddess. This evolution of the myth highlights the ancient world's complex and often contradictory views on justice, power, and the role of women. Historians still debate whether Athena's punishment of Medusa was a just act of a goddess protecting her sanctuary or a cruel, disproportionate punishment of an innocent victim, a question that continues to spark debate and reinterpretation of the myth. The curse is a lonely, agonizing thing. You see the world only through the reflections in the small, polished stones in your cave. You see your monstrous face, the writhing snakes, the eyes that burn with the silent, terrible power. You hear the terrified screams of the unfortunate mortals who wander too close to your cave. Their screams cut short as they are turned to silent, unmoving statues. You see them now, a garden of stone, a grim and haunting collection of your victims. You didn't ask for this power. You don't want to hurt anyone, but you have no choice. Your gaze is a weapon, and it fires every time you see a living thing. Your curse is not a punishment of physical pain, like Prometheus, or eternal labour, like Sisyphus. It is a punishment of isolation and spiritual death. You are forced to be a monster, to live a life of fear and hatred, to be forever alone. You were a priestess who sought purity, and now you are a creature of venom and stone. It is a cruel and poetic form of justice, a testament to the fact that divine anger can transform not just your life, but your very essence. And you, Medusa, are a tragic, monstrous embodiment of that truth. The labyrinth is a distant, confusing memory. You're no longer in the oppressive darkness of its twisting corridors, but in the wide, open sky, a place of impossible freedom. You are a silent observer, a witness to a father's hope and a son's defiance. Before you, soaring on a pair of magnificent, feathered wings, is Icarus, his father. The master inventor Daedalus flies ahead, his movements measured and careful. Icarus, however, is a figure of pure, unadulterated joy. He is a mortal, a creature of the earth, who has been given the impossible gift of flight. Daedalus built these wings for you both. He built them out of feathers and wax, a desperate escape from the tyranny of King Minos of Crete. He warned you. He gave you a simple, elegant rule to follow: fly a middle course, not too low, so the damp air from the sea doesn't clog your wings, and not too high, so the sun doesn't melt the wax that holds them together. It was a simple rule, a reasonable one, a father's plea to his son to respect the limits of their mortal nature. But for Icarus, the thrill of flight was too much. The sky, the clouds, the sun, it all beckoned to him. The world below, with all its mortal limitations and dangers, was forgotten. You watch as he begins to climb higher, his boyish laughter echoing on the wind. The wings, a product of mortal ingenuity, are a marvel to behold. But he's not just flying, he's soaring, a reckless ascent toward the sun, the very source of all divine power and life. He's defying the natural order, the laws of the universe that say mortals belong on the ground. He's a tiny, insignificant speck challenging the vastness of the sky, and you feel a sense of dread, a terrible premonition of what is to come. A well-known historical fact is that the myth of Icarus is a metaphor for the dangers of ambition and hubris. A less-known detail is that some versions of the story say that Daedalus had also built a pair of wings for his son out of feathers and string. But Icarus was so impatient to fly that he ignored his father's warnings and simply used the wax and feathers. This makes his defiance less about the joy of flight and more about a youthful, impatient arrogance. You can see Daedalus below, a small, frantic figure, his shouts of warning carried away by the wind. But Icarus doesn't hear him. He is intoxicated by the height, by the power, by the feeling of being closer to the gods than any mortal has ever been. It's a funny, pathetic kind of defiance, a moment of pure bliss before a moment of pure terror. He's flying on stolen wings, a gift from his father, but a gift that belongs to the birds and the gods. He's a mortal trying to be a god. And the cosmic scales are about to rebalance themselves with a brutal, sickening finality. The sun, a constant watchful eye in the sky, begins to take notice. Its warmth, once a gentle comfort, now feels like a searing curse. The wax on Icarus's wings, once so solid and reliable, begins to soften. The feathers, once so strong and proud, begin to loosen. You can see his frantic movements, the sudden terrible realization of his folly. His laughter turns into a gasp of terror. The world, which he so recklessly defied, is now about to reclaim him. One by one, the feathers fall away, like tiny, dying birds spiraling down to the sea. He flails his arms, a pathetic, desperate motion, trying to hold onto the impossible gift of flight. But it's no use. The wings, the source of his brief, beautiful defiance, are gone. The wax has melted. His defiance has turned to a fall from grace. He plummets from the sky, a screaming, terrified figure, a shooting star of human hubris. He hits the sea with a sickening splash, and the waves close over him. The silence that follows is more deafening than any sound. It is the silence of a god's justice, the silence of a lesson learned too late. The sun, a silent and indifferent judge, shines on as if nothing has happened. The sea, a cruel and unforgiving tomb, swallows him whole. Historians still debate whether the myth of Icarus is a warning against technology and innovation, or simply a story about the dangers of not listening to your elders. A philosophical question, perhaps, but one that has a clear and tragic answer to you. As you watch the sun shine on the now empty sky, Icarus is a stark and beautiful warning that some gifts, some powers, are not meant for mortals to possess. You cannot defy the natural order. You cannot fly too close to the gods, and you cannot steal their fire without getting burned. The forest is a place of whispered secrets and dappled sunlight, a home you once shared with laughter and song. You are Echo, a nymph, a creature of the woodlands, and once. Your voice was as clear and bright as a mountain stream. You were known for your charming, playful chatter, and your stories, your voice a constant companion to the rustling leaves and chirping birds. But now, all of that is a distant, heartbreaking memory. You are a silent ghost in your own home, a prisoner in a cage of your own making. Your crime was not a malicious one, not a theft of fire or gold. It was a simple act of loyalty to your friends, the other nymphs, who were also victims of the wandering eye of Zeus. You see, Zeus, the king of the gods, was famously unfaithful to his wife, the goddess Hera. He would often come to the woodlands to dally with the nymphs, and it was your job to distract Hera with your endless chatter while he made his escape. You were good at it, a master of conversation, and your stories were so captivating that Hera would stay with you, listening, while her husband slipped away. But Hera, the queen of the gods, was not a fool. She eventually discovered your deceit, and her fury was a cold, righteous flame. She looked at you, not with anger, but with a terrible, icy justice. You had used your voice to deceive her, to protect her cheating husband, and for that, she would take it away. She placed a curse upon you, a curse of profound and poetic cruelty. You would no longer be able to speak your own words. You would only be able to repeat the last words of others, an empty echo of their thoughts and feelings. A truly bizarre and less-known detail is that some myths suggest Echo's curse was not just about repeating words, but about a fading, ethereal quality to her voice, as if it was slowly disappearing forever. This makes her punishment not just about a loss of identity, but about a gradual, painful erasure. Your voice, the very essence of who you are, was gone. You were left with only a ghost of it, a hollow imitation of others. It's a punishment of profound psychological torment. You can hear everything, you can feel everything, but you can't express any of it. You are a silent witness to the world around you, a tragic figure who can only give back what she has been given. It's a funny, awful kind of irony, that the nymph known for her chattiness is now condemned to an eternal silence, broken only by the words of others. A well-known historical fact is that the name Echo comes from the Greek word echo, meaning sound. A less-known detail is that in some versions of the myth, Echo's curse was not just a punishment from Hera, but also a kind of magical protection from a lovesick admirer, who was so captivated by her voice that he would have never let her go. This makes her curse not just a punishment, but a complex and tragic blessing. Historians still debate whether Hera's punishment of Echo was a just consequence for her complicity in Zeus's affairs or a cruel and disproportionate act against an innocent victim. A question that gets to the very heart of the power dynamics between the gods and mortals. You wander the forest, a lonely, heartbroken creature. You are still beautiful, but your beauty is a cruel mockery. A face without a voice, a body without a soul. You see a handsome young man, Narcissus, and in him you find a new, terrible hope. You fall in love with him, a deep consuming love. You follow him through the woods, your heart a furious drum against your ribs, wanting to tell him how you feel, but you can't. You can only wait for him to speak. He calls out to his friends, "Is anyone here?" And you, your heart aching with a silent longing, repeat, "Here, here." He calls out to his friends to come out, and you, a pathetic and beautiful ghost, repeat, "Come out, come out." He is confused, and you are trapped, a prisoner of your own curse. He sees you, and you run to him, desperate to touch him, to hold him, to somehow communicate the depth of your love. But he recoils from you, a nymph who can only repeat his own words. He leaves you, and you are left alone, a heartbroken and empty echo. You spend the rest of your days pining for him, your love a silent, unreturned agony. You waste away, your body growing thinner and thinner until only your voice, your cursed voice, remains. You become a part of the forest, a whispered sound, a ghost in the wind. You are Echo, the nymph who lost her voice for a god's love, and your punishment is a cruel, eternal loneliness, a testament to the fact that some gods' anger is not a loud, destructive thing, but a silent, profound emptiness that can take away your very identity. The sound of your daughter's laughter is the most beautiful thing in the world, or at least it used to be. Now, it's just a faint, echoing memory. You are King Midas, a man who once had everything: a beautiful kingdom, a loving family, and the ear of the gods themselves. You were granted a wish, a magical gift that you, in your foolish arrogance, thought would be the ultimate blessing. You asked for the golden touch. You wanted everything you touched to turn to gold, and your wish, as is the way with the gods, was granted. The day it happened, you were ecstatic. You woke up and touched your bed, and it shimmered with a new, beautiful light, turning into a solid mass of glittering gold. You touched a chair, and it, too, became a magnificent throne. You walked through your gardens, touching flowers and trees, watching in awe as they were transformed into works of art. Magnificent sculptures of purest gold. You were the richest man in the world. You were a god in your own right, and you were so wrong. The curse, for that is what it was a slow, suffocating kind of torment. You soon discovered that the golden touch wasn't just a blessing for inanimate objects. You tried to eat, but the moment the food touched your lips, it hardened into a cold, inert lump of gold. You tried to drink, but the cool water became a heavy, metallic liquid you couldn't swallow. You were a king with all the gold in the world, and you were starving to death. It's a funny, awful kind of irony, that the man who wanted so much wealth was now denied the most basic of human necessities. A well-known historical fact about King Midas is that his story is often told as a cautionary tale about greed and the folly of wishing for things without considering the consequences. A less-known detail is that some myths say that the golden touch was not just a wish but a curse, given to Midas after he chose the music of Asata, Marsyas, over the music of Apollo, a choice that showed his foolishness and lack of artistic taste. This makes his punishment not just about greed, but about a kind of cosmic bad judgment. Historians still debate whether Midas's punishment was a fitting consequence for his hubris or an example of a god's cruel and disproportionate sense of humour, a question that seems to have a clear and tragic answer to you, as you feel the pangs of hunger in your stomach. The final, heartbreaking part of your curse came in the form of your daughter. She ran to you, her arms outstretched, her face a mixture of terror and love. You, in a moment of pure desperate affection, reached out to hug her, to comfort her, and your fingers, in a slow, horrible moment, touched her skin. She became a statue, a beautiful, lifeless thing of solid gold. Her laughter, the most precious sound in the world, was silenced forever. You were left with a golden statue, a cold and heavy monument to your own greed and folly. You, a king who had everything, were now a man with nothing. You had no food, no water, no family. You were alone, surrounded by the cold, inert objects of your own making, a prisoner in a palace of gold. You begged the god who had granted you the wish to take it back. And in a moment of mercy, he did. He told you to go to a river and wash yourself, and as you did, the golden touch flowed out of you and into the water. The river, a simple and beautiful thing, became filled with golden dust, a constant reminder of your greed and your lesson. The curse was over, but the consequences were not. Your daughter was returned to you, a living, breathing girl once more, but the memory of her as a cold statue, a monument to your own selfishness, would haunt you forever. You were no longer a rich king, but a man humbled by his own foolishness, a man who had learned, in the hardest way possible, that some things are not meant to be touched by a mortal's greedy hand. You have heard a tale of the brutal consequences of stealing from the gods. This story is a reminder that greed, arrogance, and carelessness all have their price, whether it was a sun god's golden fleece, a titan's fire, or an ambitious king's gift. Every action has a reaction from the divine. They can be kind, but they can also be cruel and never forget. These are not just ancient myths, they are timeless warnings, whispered from one generation to the next. Let us allow these lessons to sink in. Let them soothe our anxieties and lull us into a peaceful slumber.